Catus Maximus here. This time with a little review of some Midwest USA tinner snips, which are just smaller sheet metal scissors, and some right-hand cut, some green aviation snips. Red is left-hand cut, and I don't know why red isn't right and green isn't left, because that seems to make more sense to me. But that's the way it is. These are made in USA. They're really not too bad, although they wouldn't be my first choice. Even though they seem to be around 25 bucks, which is a lot cheaper than, say, the Malco Max 2000 series. These tend to run around $35, even $40 retail. Even some subscribers have talked about, I did talk about these Aviations, these Malcos a long time ago, that they like the Midwest ones. And the Midwest ones aren't too bad at all. I do like them. One thing I will say is that they high carbon, or excuse me, this is the packaging. But on here, I believe it says high carbon steel. So there's been a few comments about how the blade, I'm searching around online, people like them. They seem to work pretty well, are pretty strong, but they wish that the blades would just stay sharp a little bit longer. And that has to do with the alloy steel. Something like these Taiwanese Stanleys use chrome and molybdenum, and they actually get some pretty good ratings just because they have a halfway decent steel. Seems to be the same way with the Malcos. They're using a better quality alloy. I do appreciate that the Midwest are made in the U.S. and actually are maintaining a pretty competitive price. But it's the kind of product where I think they should charge 30 bucks and use a little bit better alloy on the blades. I think they could use just a little bit lighter of a spring because there's quite a bit of force required to squeeze these. And if you're using these in a production environment, whether you're installing air conditioning systems, building ventilation, sheet metal buildings, sheet metal roofs, you're going to be using these a ton. On a quick side note, these are for mild steel, thin, basic steel, something like this. This is even maybe a little bit thick, but it's not too bad. But this is essentially what these are made for. And then the offset is so that you can cut curves. So greens are really for making right-hand cuts if you need to get around a curve such as this. And this is kind of one of the issues I'm showing here is the fact that the high cross-section on these blades is something else that I've even noticed on my old Stanleys. And with these Midwests, it seems that the Malcos, they just have a little bit thinner of a blade profile, and it makes them just a little bit easier to get in there and to really cut a nice curve. The easiest way for me to really put it, just because the blade profile happens to be just a little bit narrower, so it's not having to split the metal quite as far. And I saw some complaints. People were like, it won't cut this and this. These things will never cut something that's super heavy gauge like this, even if it's aluminum. And you have something like this, which is, you know, a hardened stainless steel. You need heavy-duty tools like this to cut thick sheet metal products. Hand scissors are made for cutting super thin, just basic mild steel. So anyway, they work okay, but in my opinion, the Malcos are better. There's also other couple reasons besides the fact that these have just a little bit stiffer of a spring, so it's more fatigue. The Malco uses a linear spring, so it has good activation, but you just don't have to squeeze quite as hard. And of course, you put a drop of oil in the pivots periodically, and then you won't really have any issues with sticky aviation snips. My real issues is a couple fold this catch. I generally like it. The reason all these have catches is because you want to keep these blades as nice as possible, and they can be sharp. You don't want to have them sitting open, so that's why they take up less space, so they have a catch. But the Midwest is just a basic catch. Real simple. It doesn't auto-release or anything. I think it's okay, but generally speaking, I think they could have done a better job, but for the price, I suppose it's okay. Something like on these Stanleys here, if you squeeze, it will automatically release. Some people don't like that because sometimes it will come open in the tool bag. Some people do like it because you can just pick these up, squeeze them, and then just go. And then they have a little lever here, which is just a little bit easier to work with. Why I recommend the Malcos, besides having a better balanced spring, is I like the switch. I like the switch where you can flip it right here, nice and easy, or they have a little thing right here. So you have multiple options. And on the Malcos, they do not auto-release. So it seems like something that's generally not favored just because it comes open too easily. But these Malcos are really pretty darn easy to use to do that release. The worst thing, and the reason I really recommend the Malcos, is basically so you get less fatigued, so that you can get more work done in the day and make more money. The $10 or $15 more that you spend on the Malcos will be more than made up through the simple fact that if you're using these all day long, these MidWests, I'm a 6 foot tall person, and you can see my fingertips just barely reach right there. And so, since I'm so far out on the ends of my fingers, it's just taken me more effort because I have less leverage at the very tips of my fingers. I'm having to reach a little bit further. I'm having to swing the handles just a little bit further. It all adds up to more energy put out and being fatigued more quickly. And the Malcos are better in that regards. With the Malcos, you can see that the handles open quite as wide. Combined with the slightly softer spring means less fatigue, less work that your muscles are doing, and the more productive you'll be throughout the day. So ultimately, plus I like the way the Malcos use a 10.9 hinge bolt right there. That is pretty nice. So anyway, that's kind of my deal. I think the MidWests are pretty nice, especially for being American made for $25. I think they're really hitting a nice target. But my recommendation to MidWest, make them $30 and improve them a little bit. Otherwise, I'm still going to have to recommend the Malcos. As far as the tin snips, they're just sheet metal snips. Here's some Wisses, which are just, this is just a larger version. I do like the very narrow jaws on this, and I wish MidWest would have also done that, made these just a little bit more narrow. But we can see they are nicely made. Looks like they are ground jaws, so they definitely work pretty well. They don't have any serration, so they shouldn't leave too many marks when you're cutting up sheet metal. And generally speaking, they work just fine when you need to do little trim cuts or maybe just knock a corner off of something. They'll work out just fine. So I think these are just great for what they are. Like 15 or 20 bucks for this little small set, and I think they're pretty awesome. Easiest way to say it is I think this MidWest product is more competitive than their tin snips are more competitive than their aviation snips. There is one improvement, which is they could have done a little. You can see the jaws are ever so slightly curved, and that's so as you're cutting, they maintain a specific angle, and it makes it just a little bit easier to do your cut. But I do wish it was just a little bit more eccentric. You can see how on these Wisses, how they really splay apart like a duckbill, and that just translates to making it a little bit easier to do cuts. Although these, of course, are, a larger pair as well. Anyway, I blabbed for too long, but that was my impression. Always heard and seen about the MidWest USA Snips, and so ended up finding a deal on a couple of these and wanted to share my opinion with y'all. And ultimately, if you want a budget model, I probably still recommend these chrome molybdenum Stanleys. I mean, these things aren't bad at all. They have a bit of a wide handle opening, but they're still pretty competitive. And to tell you the truth, for some reason, I don't know if it's the extra hard steel, but these things really cut easily. I mean, as far as the amount of force I'm putting in to cut this, I can cut that piece of metal with almost no force. And it almost feels like I'm working just a little bit harder with the MidWests as compared to the Stanleys. The Malcos, I think they're okay, but definitely more force. And that's the only other thing I could really mention is for some reason these Stanleys are really cut super easily with like very little force. All right, that's all I got. I really appreciate everybody who's been watching and subscribing, and if you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.